Hello, everybody. Thank you once again for joining us. It's going to be a great evening. Tonight, we are going to have our heads in the clouds, all right? We've got a photographer called Rob Knight, and he's going to do a talk all about drone photography. It's going to be, and videography. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. Right, while we're waiting for people to get here, where are you watching from? Michael Falk is watching from Montreal. Look at that. Get in there. Well done. We've got Stu from New Zealand. He's always probably the furthest one away. I think Stu is there. Steve from Lanzarote. I bet it's nice and warm out there, not like it is here. Who else have we got here? From County Mayo in Ireland. There we go. Chris Connolly from Ireland. Someone from California there. Julie from California. Oh, here we go. Batik Man from Sky. Well, thank you for joining us. Right, good. You're in the house. There's loads of people coming in. Album of the month is there. Different this month. You probably might not even get that because you know I like my rock music, and that is not rock music, right? Oh, look at that! Someone's got it straight away. Oh well, do you know what? You was first user, but because you're using a weird name, I'm not taking it. We're going to have this one here from Grey Fozzie. Madonna Like a Virgin. Well done. Yes, I love Madonna. I know I love AC/DC and Pink Floyd and that, but for some weird reason, Madonna is one of my favorites. Right, here we go. That's the album of the month. Loads of people in the house. It is now time to introduce Rob into the mix. Hello, Rob.
Evening, Mark. How are we doing?
We're good, thanks. So thanks for joining us. Introduce yourself, Rob. I will put your presentation up when you're ready.
Evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, my name's Rob Knight. So I'm a professional photographer. I've been for many, many years. I'm from Sheffield in the UK, although I spent an awful lot of time up in the Highlands. I do run residential workshops. I've probably started out in drone work many moons ago, and before that I did aerial photography because I'm a geographer by education. So yeah, it's a little bit of a pot of history.
Okay, so drone and geography, I would imagine they kind of go together a little bit, do they?
Indeed, yeah. It's I think more so nowadays. I think it's part of data analysis and stuff. Yeah, it's they're creeping in all over the place.
All right, well, fantastic. I've put your presentation up. Your website for everyone that's interested. Rob's website is at the bottom. Rob is actually off grid. He's one of the few people that's off grid when it comes to Instagram and Facebook, but he's on Blue Sky, so you can you can catch him there. Right, Rob, over to you, mate. It's all yours.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thanks for joining us, everybody. So, yeah, just a little bit of an intro as much as anything, really, in terms of the talk tonight. So, yes, with our heads in the clouds. So, aerial drone photography and videography. There probably won't be as much videography involved in it. And I will show some elements. But really, what I want to kind of lead you through tonight as much as anything is a little bit of an intro. I won't be touching on the technicalities of how you fly a drone and all manner of things like that and stuff like that, because there's loads of stuff out there you can watch on YouTube. Really, we're going to look at quite a lot of the creative side of things, but we're also going to look at some of the fundamentals and some of the things you need to think about. So for anybody who's not had a dabbled their feet in the drone world. And for anybody who wonders whether it's going to be an annoyance to them or an obsession, maybe this will answer a few questions tonight. And I'm very much in the mindset of seeing it's part of my workflow and part of my arsenal. So we'll touch on that tonight, and we'll touch on plenty of things. Happy to take questions during interspersed. I know Mark's going to keep an eye on those. So if
I forgot to tell people actually, but regulars will know, you're about 20-30 seconds behind when you type. So when you type something in, we don't see it for about 20 seconds. So just be aware of that. That's it. Sorry, Rob, I forgot to say that at the start.
No worries, that's fine. Right, so we will make a start, and I'm going to make sure I've got an idea of time so I can keep the time. So here we go then. Right, so I will give you a bit more of a slightly more of a potted history. So yeah, as I say, I'm a bit of photographer for many, many years. I class myself as somebody who works in long form. So I tend not to be worried about single shots and thinking about kind of where I can going out searching for glory moments and the pressure of that. I love working in projects, I love telling stories, and I love linking things together. So the drone work naturally sits within that. So tonight we are going to have a look at how the drone and aerial photography sits within the kind of my workflow. It will differ for everybody, and that's the thing to bear in mind, that we all approach the photography very differently. So you'll get one kind of approach and one perspective tonight, but please do, I will say, have a look out there and bend, kind of take little bits from everybody, and if it certainly gets somebody out there thinking about getting the drone up and having a go with it, then that's all the great. So we're going to have a little look tonight at some of the fundamentals you need to think about. So being drone safe. Obviously, many of you will have heard that there's been rule changes at the beginning of the year as well, and there was a load of hullabaloo. And if you could quieten the noise down on places like Facebook and all the various groups, it's relatively simple to follow if you have a look on the CEA website, and there are some links in the presentation, and I can send it on to Mark afterwards for sharing as a PDF. That's not a problem. So we'll have a look at that. We'll have a look at thinking about things like equipment and apps and things that will make your drone flying experience more fun and safer. And then we're going to have a look at through the fun. I guess the vast majority of what I do is photography, but we'll also have a look at some videography and think about where that fits in. Now, a lot of my videography side of things fits into what I call at the moment my life's work, which is a long form piece of work which has been going on for 10 years now up in Ardnamurchan in the West Highlands of Scotland. So a lot of that at the minute is raw material. So it will be stuff that we put together. So we'll have a little bit of a kind of touch on some of those things and some of the short form stuff we've done. And I will even, I'm not averse to showing really early stuff. And I'll show probably one of the first drone pieces of video that I put together with my daughter. And I always think that photography, like anything we do creatively, it's a journey. Never expect perfection right at the start in anything any of us do. And it's about learning. It's about taking your ideas and exploring and see what the art of the possible is. So we're going to do lots of thinking about it tonight. And I will dabble on some other creative ideas. So for those who don't necessarily want to get a drone and the expense of that, although they are cheaper than they ever were, there are other creative ways to change your perspective in terms of how you look at the world. And we'll touch on those tonight as well. So, and there is the traditional way of changing your perspective, which we'll also touch on. Excellent. Right. So what is drone photography? I guess is a simple thing to is a question most people ask, and it's a case of using a remote controlled aerial drone or unmanned aerial vehicle to take images or video from the air. You're piloting it, so there's a lot of extra skills to take on board. Anybody who's ever sort of played flight simulators and things like that in their gaming years on computers, the control of the sticks will actually feel quite logical. And if you've ever flown a model aircraft or a remote control car, again, it will feel quite logical. But the important things to remember, and I know that there was a lot of hullabaloo about this early days, is actually all the skills that we deploy as a photographer with our regular cameras, whether it be a full-size cameras, our phone, our film cameras, whatever we want to use, all those things are equally important when you use your drone. So visualization, composition, timing, light, creative eye, and having a thought process. That doesn't change just because you've got a drone and that's your camera for this moment. So that's the important thing to remember. It's, your photography will carry you through all of this. And your skill and your visual eye and your creative thinking will carry you through. And the drone will effectively be another lens in your arsenal and another way of working. So really, there are other ways of working as well. So, and we'll touch on a little bit on these later. So drone or another aerial device. That might be extended tripod. I do know people who've got tripods that are nearly twice, about another 3 foot taller than them. You can get extendable poles, and you can book a helicopter trip. And this will touch on kind of many moons ago. And this, my introduction to aerial, I guess, was as a geographer by education. And actually at university, we were very lucky that we got to do some aerial photography and survey work. So again, that was my first introduction to aerial. So the drone, in some ways, felt quite natural. It felt like a natural progression. But really, it is about just seeing things from a different perspective, changing how you look at the world, but actually bringing together all your skills that you've got, composing, thinking about your images, but being able to play with these perspectives and use them creatively. So you don't have to do obvious stuff. You could do stuff that is abstract. You could do stuff that is certainly, not so much record, but you could do classic landscape or classic work. And anybody who's seen the aerial work of Hans Strand in his Iceland book quite a number of years ago, I mean, a lot of that was done from a plane, but you might be familiar. And if you're not, have a look at Hans's work as well. There's some great stuff there. And actually how he kind of almost abstracts a lot of the textures within the Icelandic landscape. And that, again, is just using his photographic eye. And you can see, if you have a look through his body of work that he's got, actually how his eye carries through from his photographs with his standard camera all the way into his drone. Okay, so the first thing to remember, and the most important thing to remember about drones is, you've got to think about the implications of using a drone. I know there are a lot of really cheap ones on the market. You can go down the middle aisle of some well-known budget supermarkets and there's a 30-40 quid drone. I guarantee you it'll fly off and end up in a hedge in seconds. So if you're serious about using a drone, I would say, give it some real thought, but actually look to invest a reasonable amount. Start secondhand if need be, and actually look at some of the reputable brands, because they will enable you to fly safer. They have a lot of safeguards in there, and that's one of the things to think about, really importantly. So, drone safe, considerations for safe and legal use. And it is really, really critical, because what we are doing effectively is putting an area, a vehicle up into a congested airspace. Now, yes, there is a maximum ceiling height if you don't, if you're not naughty and you don't sort of unlock your drone. So if you use it responsibly and respectfully, they've got the maximum ceiling height 400 feet from the ground. Now, in theory, you shouldn't get an issue there, because that's designed to give you a safe space between planes, helicopters, and the other stuff in the air. The other thing to think about within that is there'll be other drone users. So there are apps out there, and I will touch on some of these shortly, where you can actually register your flights. So it's about thinking and planning in advance a little bit. And so you can register your flight plan. You can, have a look at who else is flying in that area, and it just gives you a sense of safety. Some things worth picking up on really quickly. Since the rule changes this year, obviously a lot of drone DJI and various companies market their drones for kind of the sub 200, a good array of models below the kind of 250 grand. They come in at 249. That used to have slightly more relaxed rules, but now pretty much any drone, you are going to have to make sure that you have got one your flyer ID and one your operator ID. That's just a case of registering with the CEA, doing an online test, and it's pretty common sense, but actually it'll give you a good understanding of what you can and what you can't do, and all the considerations you need to take into mind. There are lots of things and kind of class marks and things that have been introduced this year in legacy drones. I won't go too deeply into all of that, but it's definitely worth having a look on the CEA website if you have got a drone or you're thinking of buying one, and just seeing where your drone falls and working out where you can fly it, what you can do, and what the restrictions are specifically for you. But having your ID, doing your test is hugely important. You'll get an operator ID through the post. You print that out and you stick that on all drones that you own, so that identifies. It looks like the same sort of number you would see on a light aircraft on a plane. So that's really important. Obviously, other considerations depending on how you're using it. So if insurance for a hobbyist is optional, there are some good services available out there that are well worth having a look at. I think FPV online, I think about 25 quid a year, you get membership. They'll help you with your with all the things you need to step through to do your accreditation, etc. And you also get a certain amount of public liability insurance. Obviously, if you're thinking about using it as part of your photography arsenal, if you deliver commercial work, then you are going to need your own insurance and your own public liability. Sorry, Mark.
That's all right, Rob. There's a question here. I'm just going to interrupt. It's from Stu Hampton. He said, this sheet looks great. It does look great. It looks really, I was thinking exactly the same thing. And he's basically saying, where can you obtain this from? Is this something that you made? Is it this sheet?
It's not something I made. There is a bit of there's a bit of credit in the corner. It's actually something I got offline, and I checked it back. What I'll do is I'll send my like I say, I'll send my PDF on over to you, Mark, and you're welcome to share, and it will be in there as a slide.
Yeah. I'll put it in the for members area, Stu. I'll put it in the members area so that people can download it. Just this sheet, I think. I'll just do that in it. Yeah.
Good question, that Stu. As I say, I think anything that simplifies it that is really handy and just gives you a visual representation. It's really good.
Because it is the law is complex. I mean, when we come to the Q&A at the end or during, I'll bet you half of the questions is going to be about the law and stuff like that. because
I'd imagine so.
And and just if you're going to want to ask questions, obviously you can ask them as you go, but we will have some time at the end as well, just for everybody to know.
Other things to bear in mind, and this might not be something a lot of people have to consider, but if since January this year, if you are flying at night, because of how the drones work, when they are recording, they switch off the lights that are naturally on, so that your green and red light, so it doesn't effectively interfere with the video. The CEA have sort of deemed that actually they prefer those to be on at all times. Now, as I say, not everybody's going to fly at night, and a lot of people might think, well, what's the point? Anyway, I fly at night specifically because I also use the drone as part of the work I do for a football club, and actually doing analysis work and allowing them to kind of look top down at the kind of shape during training sessions. So obviously have to have a couple of LEDs on there, and there's loads of good stuff online about where to get these from and reputable places. There's plenty of reputable places online. Heligai and places like that will normally put you in a good standing. So that's pretty much an overview of the rules and regs. I say just bear in mind all your kind of distances and things like that. Next, these couple of slides here are from the Drone and Model Aircraft Code on the CAA. You will be able to find these online, and these are regularly updated. Again, just give you a really good visual about things to think about, i.e. Visual line of sight, when you may need a spotter. So if you're using like a first person view, like a headset, things to also think about in terms of buildings and specific types of buildings as well. So some things you can't fly over. Obviously, the obvious ones are airports. And there's plenty of apps out there, and we will touch on those, that will show you on a map GIS layers, which will basically show you where no-fly zones are or flight restriction zones. It will also show you where things like areas of outstanding natural beauty and stuff like that that may have not necessarily banning orders, but specific requirements around nesting season of animals and birds and things like that, and actually being respectful in terms of when you fly. So there is a lot of research to do if you're going to fly your drone about specifically where you're going to fly it and understanding the kind of, the local nuances. And some places, I think the National Trust, for one, to have quite a strict policy about flying over their land, although it's quite a grey area because obviously you're taking off from public land. But for me, I also be respectful to, if there's a set of guidelines in place that might not be rules, but just be respectful, and less confrontation, the better, and you will enjoy your drone experience. Right, equipment and apps. So, as I said, it's not as simple as just getting yourself a drone and popping it up in the air and thinking, right, this is going to be great. I'm going to have great fun now. There's lots of things to consider. Certainly, obviously, you're going to have to consider a drone. The obvious thing there. You're going to need something to fly. There's lots of things out there. The key here is to think about your use case scenario. Where are you going to be flying it? What you're going to be doing? What are you using it for? Are you using it for photography? Are you filming things like vlogs? Do you want it to fly along and film you? Is it a bit more recreational? That will guide you in the kind of drone that you purchase. The other thing to think about is actually, and this was one thing that I thought have downsized my drone effectively over the years, is, will it be a compromise if you do a lot of trekking into the hills or whatever, about whether it's a drone day or a photography day? If you have a bigger drone, it's going to add to your weight and your carrying load. So actually, if you're going to be thinking, oh, well, I want to do both, then you might want to look at some of the smaller drones. And then you've obviously got to think about things like wind speed and the weather and things like that. So once you get a drone, you'll start to understand its capabilities. There are loads of kind of resources online, loads of really good YouTube videos that will give you in-depth into each drone, what it will do, what its capabilities are. I would always advise people, say, avoid the cheap ones, go as, push your budget like a camera, really, like a lens, as far as you can go. And if you can get one that's got sensors in most directions, that's going to give you a good degree of protection. If think about the kind of photography you want to do. Do you want to flip the camera around so you can do portrait orientation video for social media and stuff like that as well? So it's thinking about your use case and then do a bit of research. Then, as well as your drone, there's loads of apps out there which will give you a really good understanding of what you can do and where to look. So there's Drone Assist. There's numerous apps now, and I'm trying to remember the name of the middle one. I will try and find some links and pop them in when I send Mark the presentation that will give you an understanding of the weather. I think at most about £6 or £7 some of these apps for a year's subscription. Really, really good. It'll give you in-depth weather. It's also, you can look at some of the kind of the standard weather apps as well, such as Windy and any that give you more in-depth weather conditions, because you'll be able to understand things like cloud cover, cloud height, precipitation, wind speed at various heights, and they all become really important to when you get the drone up in the air. And obviously your drone will also, if you go for a better drone, it will also give you feedback. So it will tell you if you're up that the wind's high and you might want to bring it down a little bit and things like that. And obviously, you know, if you're trying to fly it in horrible windy conditions, it's going to affect the stability of what you want, what you're trying to capture. So you've got to think about that as well. So you can also get quite a number of apps, and there's a guy who's created a really good thing I think is available on GitHub, where you can basically push all your data in from your drone, and it will give you things like historic logs and stuff, and map all your stuff onto a Google Map layer and various things like that. So again, for anybody who's interested in the kind of the analytics and the metrics side of what they've done, it's a really good way of understanding that. Also, if you have a look on places like Amazon and other bookshops, you can get a relatively inexpensive little drone log book, which will basically get you into good practice for all the things you do when you're thinking about flying your drone. So it's like condition test, flight plan. Have you checked it off with, you know, the relevant authorities if there's specific flight restrictions and various things like that. And that also gives you a sense of cover as well. So if you are using it commercially and you have your public liability, there's an expectation that you actually keep a log of your flights as well, and that's always worth thinking about. So that's the other things you're going to think about as well before I move on to the next slide. Make sure you've got plenty of batteries. They don't tend to last very long. The colder it gets, the less time they last. The slightly windier it gets, obviously, the harder the drone is having to work, the batteries will chunk through a lot quicker. Make sure you've got plenty of memory. Make sure your memory cards are fast as well. So don't skimp on things like that. If you've just been out and spent 600, 700, 800 whatever quid on a drone, don't skimp on the stuff that will enable you to fly it to its maximum potential. That's the important thing. For me as well, but I would always err on the side of the drones that have the built-in screen with the controller, and that's purely a personal thing, but so I don't have to use my phone. And it always means your phone's free. It's not tied in from other stuff. There are some, I guess, some restrictions to that, because I know certainly on some of the drones, if you do use an app on your phone, you can sideload additional things. So you can sideload certain things that will enable you to kind of do GIS, spatial mapping, and various things with your drone. But again, it comes down to use case, really. So that's worth thinking about. Some really basic stuff to think about that's really important. Make sure you've got a decent case, because it is an expensive bit of kit. And the last thing you want to do is break the damn thing. Also, if it's one of the smaller drones, I've downsized from the Phantom 4 Advanced, where I started, and I've gone to the Mini 4 Pro, and that effectively takes up a lens space in my bag. That is it. And that became that decision about it not being a drone day or a photography day and being able to use it for both, especially if you want to go out and anybody who creates YouTube videos and things like that, you're going to think, actually, I need my drone because I might be using it as kind of a remote camera to film me, etc. So you're not going to want to be weighed down with multiple bags. But if you are just doing drone, hard case is great, especially if you're going into some kind of rough environments. Landing pad, cheap option, a cheap investment, but if you're taking off from a rather indistinctive grassy area in the Scottish Highlands that looks pretty much like every other grassy area for the next 300 miles in one direction, actually a luminous landing pad just gives the drone, when it takes off, not just its GPS positioning, but it'll also take a picture and of visual of where it's taken off from internally. So it's another thing. It gives you an ability for it to return home easily, as well as the GPS that it will use to fly home. The other thing, it levels off the terrain as well, so you're not going to land it and snap your propellers when it comes down, lands in long grass. So just worth thinking about. Thing bottom left is wind speed device, that just allows you to hold that up and check what the wind speed is. Gives you a sense at ground level as well, so will enable you just to get a basic understanding, because an app is great. It'll give you a forecast, but obviously, depending on where you are, there'll be micro conditions that you might need to take into consideration. And then bottom right, set filters. As with any camera, any lens combination, if you're going to want to create cinematic footage, if you're going to want to create slower shutter speeds, you're going to want to slow it down a little bit. So a set of ND filters, some really good ones out there, Freewell, any number of companies. Not hugely expensive. I think a small set like that's about 40 quid, maybe up to about 60 or so for the bigger sets, but they're just really good. Also protect the lens on the front of the camera. But again, one of the things a lot of people complain about, they pop the drone into 4K, get it up in the air, and the footage is really jerky, and that's all to do with how your shutter speed is in relation to your frame rate. So you're gonna want to go and try and get your shutter speed down to kind of roughly get it in the right order now, half or double. Get it right.
It's double the frame rate.
It's double the frame rate. So if you're shooting at 60 frames per second, you're going to want to be aiming for 1/20th. And often it's that bright, and with a high quality sensor, it's going to soak in the light. So you're going to need an ND filter. I tend to even use an ND filter at night, just because it gives me that slightly better footage. It slows it down. So all things to take into consideration. But the most important thing for me, without being too technical and looking to things like that, is really thinking about the drone within your workflow. And this is what's important for me. It's seeing it as part of your lens and your camera arsenal, and not seeing it as a separate thing. Obviously, I said I work in projects and longer form bodies of work. So I'm thinking about how the drone gives me an additional capability to shoot from different perspectives and to catch things or do things that maybe would either be a lot more effort in the first instance or impossible without the drone. So it's certainly, this is what we're going to touch on next. So some of the things you can do here. So obviously drone uses, the obvious, shooting images and shooting video. That's pretty much what most drones do. Out of the box, they will take photographs, they'll take video. A lot of drones nowadays, especially the better ones, will shoot RAW, which again is, or DNG at least, which is great for editing. So you can sit that within your workflow quite comfortably. A lot in terms of shooting video will also shoot in flat log formats as well, which is again, if you're a kind of a video editor and you like to kind of color grade, that will give you a really great starting point. But don't be afraid, certainly on the video side, is they are very, very good out of the box. And you can get, as long as you get your frame rate and your shutter speed balanced, the colors are absolutely beautiful. So unless I'm shooting something very specific, invariably the video is always shot not in log format. So I very rarely worry about that too much. And then some of the things that maybe people don't think about how you might use your drone. So location exploration. So we all do planning. We look on Google Maps, we get the OS maps out, we're having a look online and seeing where the people have photographed, etc. You might have gone somewhere and you think, well, let's get the drone up and just have a little look at this place. That can be, it can save you ages of walking. It can save you lots of legwork. It can make you much more strategic in the field. You can get the drone up first, get an understanding of where you are, especially if you're in a remote area. You can understand the terrain a little bit, and it's really, really helpful. Quite often, I'll show some examples of this in a little bit. You know, I'll be having a look across the hills and of Ardnamurchan, and I'll think, that looks really great. I'd love to get over there. And you look on the OS map, it doesn't really give you a great deal of info on coverage of the ground, really. And, You know, you can look at the contours and get a rough idea, but actually get the drone out there, get it having a look, and you get an understanding how easy it is to get somewhere, which is really, really useful to know. Then survey and composition. So I'm not talking about doing kind of surveys. What I'm talking about is once you've got a location, you've gone somewhere, you've explored it, you're working out what to do. Again, get the drone up. It's great for getting the drone up in the air and just kind of working out what some of your key compositions might be. And again, that might just give you an ability, one, if you're working with the drone, to again think about how you can use your batteries efficiently by just using one to do a bit of a survey. It's great as well to get it up in the air, have a look down, have a look around, and you'll spot something bigger, and then you'll think, actually, there's a really nice composition in that, and you'll hone in. And that's no different to how we work with our standard cameras, really. So it's thinking about that as a kind of a creative tool. One of the simplest ways you can use a drone, and how many times have we been somewhere and we've got a tripod up to its maximum height, and you're thinking, I could just do with another 5 feet to get me above, you know, and you see that little inlet coming in, or I can just separate the hills and the, you know, and the coastline. So think of the drone as potentially, it doesn't have to be about getting it hundreds of feet up in the air. It can just be an extended tripod. Sometimes you might only need 5 feet, 10 feet above your head, and just to change the perspective. So it's one of the best uses of the drone I find, is just to open up my perspective a little bit. I touched on earlier, vlog filming. Yeah, there's a lot of people who do YouTube stuff now. There's a lot of people, and you know, unless we've got a lot of great mates, or you know, we've got a lot of money behind us, you can't take a film crew with you. So the great thing about the drones, especially with a lot of their kind of auto follow me functions and some of the kind of the dronies and some of the kind of the quick shots that they do, is you can set the drone to follow you, and you can pair that up with a microphone recording to a little kind of sound recorder, and you can join the footage back up later on. And it's a great way to kind of give that perspective change and not just be talking to a camera on a tripod. A really great example of this, have a look at some kind of Tom Heaton's videos. Really great storyteller, uses a drone really well. Nigel Danson, another one, uses a drone really well in his kind of creative vlog making. So worth thinking about it for that. And then I say, if you do work with commercial clients and you've got your insurances and various things in place, there's a lot of uses for drones out there, whether it be surveys. It might be just somebody locally who wants their roof looking at, and to save them having to pay some, you know, a couple of £100 for somebody to come around and have a look at it, you can help them out. Farmers are often looking about how they can map their land and understand their fields. I work with a football club, and we use it for data analysis, and it goes into the manager's analysis pack and the stuff that he shows the players. So commercial clients can be another way of using your drone, and it might cover some of the cost of your drone. So I did talk about location exploration a minute ago, and just a really great example of this. So this is out near Corridor Moor, the most westerly point in mainland Britain, up in Ardnamurchan, just up from Port Garb, which translates from Gallica's Port Rough. And I quite often look, the picture on the left, I quite often think, this little valley up here, wouldn't it be great to sort of get up and have a wander up? What's the terrain like? How easy will it be? Look on the map on the right, it doesn't really tell me a great deal. It just shows me some kind of tussocks and a bit of water here and there, and the rock and the contours. So I've got a rough idea, but I find if I fly the drone up there, I can understand the lay of the land, and I can make a sensible decision of, one, how long it's going to take me and how feasible it is. So location exploration is a great way, even if you're not going to take any drone photographs and you just want to work out whether to get somewhere with your camera and your tripod and lug all your stuff there. Great way of using your drone as part of your arsenal. Survey and composition. Excuse me. we talked about this earlier, and this is about once you've got the drone up in the air. Picture on the left, top left. Drone up. I'm having a look at the way the kind of the runnels and the kind of the runoff across a peat moorland goes here, and actually you get a rough sense of it, but actually you might spot something in there that looks really graphic, and then which led me to the picture on the right at the top, which kind of almost looks like kind of the veins of a leaf in some ways, and that was part of this scene on the left. So it was just getting the drone up in the air enables you and allows you to see that. And this is where we talk about composition, like you would do with your camera, like you would refine, like you would work out what's in, what's out of the compositional elements within your scene. Same with the bottom one, really. I got the drone up in the air, bigger scene here. So the left one really is just a bit of a survey shot. And I kind of picked out, actually, you then start to see individual elements. You think, well, if I get in closer, I can play with some of those and I can make something a little bit more graphic. So think of it as you would any camera and lens combination. It's about being able to refine your compositional element. We talked about extended tripod a few moments ago. So we'll touch on that, and here's a couple of great examples. Sometimes it's an extended tripod, sometimes it's about getting to places where you just couldn't get. So the one at the top left, again, out near the Ardnamurchan Lighthouse. What I knew is I wanted the path curving into the scene, but I didn't want to kind of chop the gabbro outcrops, and I wanted to be able to see the coastline edging around. Now, shooting it from low down at kind of head height, even you kind of lost a little bit at the kind of the gabbro coming out of that first bay. So just getting the drone up, I think it was probably about 10 feet up, really, just opened that composition up for me and allowed me to kind of use the path as a leading line. Top right, Kinloch Leven, again, not far from Glencoe. And I knew I wanted to look down the valley. Now, unless you can fly yourself, some kind of superhero, or you get it on a boat out into the middle of the loch, you're not going to get a shot down the loch as easily as that. So the drone enables you just to get up, get the element, get the elevation, and position the elements where you want them as much as anything else. Same with the image bottom left. So this is still out the most westerly point, again near Ardnamurchan, looking at Port Garb. And again, I just wanted to make sure that I got enough of the kind of the lead in of the kind of the walls and the tracks, the sheet lines leading me into this kind of bay in the bottom left hand corner. And the bottom one on the right, a very, very late afternoon cloudy day this winter just gone. This lovely tree that I've drove past many, many times on the way out to Ardtow and Kentra, and no matter where you stand, normally you either get yourself too close in, and you can't separate it, and you're left thinking, if I could just get an extra 10 feet, 15 feet, I could separate the tree from the hillside, but also keep the leading edge of the rock in. So again, that was just an ability to use the drone as that extended tripod. Now, I talk a lot about how I work in projects. I tend not to think in single images these days. And the drone has proved a massive kind of winner for me within this, because it enables me to kind of link stories together. It enables me to really explore not just a location, but a concept and an idea. It enables me to play with the orientation. So the images you see on this page aren't drone images. These are the images I've made with the normal camera and the normal lens. And this was an ongoing study of a cleared settlement in Ardnamurchan called Bublage. It has it's a very, what I would call a thin place. It's a place that really connects you with the past. So it was about telling stories, about getting in there and really kind of playing with all the textures and tones that were available to me. But I knew what was really important as well within that was understanding the context of the place. Now, it's not easy to do when you're on the ground because you're very, very close into it. Even coming down from the hill above it, you don't really get a sense of the context. So I knew I needed to get over there and get the drone up in the air. One, to give me a sense of a layout and an understanding. So it's thinking about how your pictures link together to tell a story. And that's where the drone came into this project. It enabled me to play, to work with that storytelling. And what became really important after that was then when I started to piece this together. So this is something that will be one of the first zines in my Spirit Ardnamurchan series. And what I knew I needed within this was almost that kind of top-down, very topographical, very kind of matter-of-fact view of the place to give us people a sense of context. Now, this project won't just be pictures, it'll be words. I write a lot as well. But I was left with two options. Top left, that's a Google Earth clip. It felt a little bit too detached, too far away. And yes, you can zoom in, but I thought, well, that's slightly detached because that's not my work. I could use, I could and have used a map. So this is courtesy of the Ardnamurchan Heritage Association. And I love, being a geographer, hand-drawn maps. But what I knew is that actually the body of work was my own. So I knew that actually the drone would enable me to get up there and actually create the plan view that I also wanted, that was going to be an intrinsic part of this story. So without the drone, I couldn't have done that. And that's why it became really, really important to me. And it's, the thing to think about there, it's your own content. And for me, that's really, really super important. So really now I'm going to have a touch through, lots of examples now of how you might, or how I use the drone specifically. And for me, it's about seeing from a new perspective. It's about enabling you to have different options. It's not a all or nothing. It complements the work. So whether I'm at the coast, and as you see some of these that are presented in this circular form here, are literally top down looking at the sea, that intersection of the tidal zone. You can go very classic off it. So this, again, out in Ardnamurchan, and I did notice that Seshi was in the audience from one of the comments, and will know the house very well. This is Grigadale, where we used to run our workshops from. But getting the drone up, as well as walking up onto the top of this hill, enabled me to bring in elements of the really important stuff in the landscape. But what hopefully will start to transcode through some of these images that I show is it's as much about composition as any other camera. I really think about leading lines. I think about the visual elements. I think about placement. I think about positioning. If we come back to John Sikowski's sort of 5 elements of photography, the perspective, the viewpoint of the photographer is one of the key fundamentals to picture making, to photography. And for me, it's then thinking about visual arrangements. Look down the left, I'm using the path on the left. That's purposely left in. I'm using the lines coming in from the old walls. We've got the lock. I've made sure that I've got enough elevation to get the small Isles in the background. I've got a bit of rum, a bit of egg, the Isle of Egg coming in as well. It's all purposeful, and that's the other reason why having a better drone and not one of the super cheap ones, because they will hover and enable you to get the images that you really, really want. Whereas put a cheap drone up in the air and it will not stay still, I guarantee you. And you will just be frustrated because you won't be able to get what you want. It enables you to get out over water and get compositions that you might be really keen on. that maybe you would have to either use a mega zoom from the other side, or equally, how many times have we been, we've been to a lake or a loch or whatever, and we've walked along and you've seen something far side and thought, if the land just extended a little bit, or if these trees weren't in the way, the drone, you can get out there, you can get away from your distractions, and you can frame the image that you've got, that you've pre-visualized. So for me, that's where it becomes a really useful tool, because it enables you to kind of realize your visualization. You can do whizzy things with it. So as you would any normal picture, the one on the left is a multi, I think it's about 36 images taken with the drone, all stitched. I used a tool called Auto Panagiga Pro. You could probably do it in Lightroom just as well, and various other stitching tools now. So again, you might not be able to get as high based on the rules and regs that you need, but don't think that that stops you getting in the shot that you want. So again, you can fly the drone up in a straight line, take X number of top-down shots, come back in the row next to it, fly up in the row, and think about stitching your shots together. So it's just like you would with a normal camera. You're stitching your panoramas, you're effectively stitching a kind of top-down gigorama. And again, you could do that looking forward as well. It doesn't have to be top-down. And the one on the right-hand side, I think, is a couple of images stitched just to give me that slightly squarer view. And again, I was just taken by the way the track leads us through this image. So and I wouldn't have got that on the ground, so the drone enables me to work with that. One thing I love about the drone, and again, this is probably the combination of the geographer and the geek in me, is once you get it up in the air, you see the world in a very different way. You see processes in the landscape, you see flow, you see gesture in the landscape, you see shape, you see form, you see textural changes, and you can work with those as you would looking down, using your camera with a macro lens and looking at kind of textural details. You can use the landscape creatively and start to think about how elements within the landscape form. And again, this was just out on Grigadale land up in Ardnamurchan, and using the kind of the rhythmic nature of the patterns that the farmers had driven in there, and using those circles. Again, thinking about the placement, using things like negative space, so we've got plenty of room on the lock on the right, things like that. So all the elements that you would use with your photography, you can do with the drone, but it just gives you that sense of you can see the world from that different perspective, and things that maybe wouldn't have been visually appealing on the ground or almost become interesting elements. And I noticed things like the hose pipe just to the left-hand side of the barn, adds an interesting shape, and there's a bucket that adds a curve next to it as well. The shadow of fences and things like that. So it's, again, you're thinking about the light and what that's doing and how that's playing with your drone. I love to play with the landscape and use it kind of suggestively as well, and I start to see things within the landscape. This one always reminds me of like a panther or something running through the landscape, and again, all it is, it's just the sedge grasses and a stream running out of a lochen. But I just love the way that the natural landscape is an artist in itself. For anybody who watches Sky Arts at any point, if you have a look for, I think it's called Troublemakers, the story of land art, and it focuses on the 1960s, predominantly American, but there was German and various other nationalities land artists, and they used to build these massive kind of sculptures and things, and then fly people up in planes to look down on them. Effectively, what the drone allows us to do is look at nature's creations and look at land as art in that sense. It then gets you looking at maps and looking at Google Maps and looking for interesting things, and just things that are generally quirky and interesting. And actually, a farm field where nowadays it's all controlled by GPS, and they find the most efficient way around the field, and they'll often circle and loop around trees and things. But actually, you look at that from above, all of a sudden it creates a really interesting visual perspective. And you find yourself getting quite obsessive looking on Google Maps for these at certain times of year, and then getting out there and getting the drone up and thinking, oh, will I have that when I actually get there? Intersections of fields and hedgerows and the shadows from trees, and again, they vary at different times of the year. So you only need a little bit of snow and something, and all of a sudden this looks like a combination of material and sort of quite textural perspectives. And again, it's when you're thinking about where you position your drone and you're looking down, it's about dividing the space up. It's about thinking creatively about your composition, which you would do normally with a normal camera. You get creative, you can start to play with angles and shapes and curves and lines, and have really great fun with that. The world is your oyster when you're up there, just as when you're on the ground with your camera and you may be looking at detail of within a lichen in a rock, and things like that. It's about just looking and thinking outside of the box with your scale. Again, processes in the landscape. I just love the way nature creates shape and form and texture and color, and it does make for great opportunity. But again, think about your composition, and think about where you place it. I've purposely got the stream on the right hand side just coming out the bottom corner. I've tried to use it to the streams running through and the water to divide the frame up. So again, just thinking creatively. Another one, you'll notice again, I'm thinking about corners and lines and how the frame's divided, and the drone is absolutely no different to this. The image on the left was probably one of the earliest drone images I made, I think, and it was after I had some lessons from a guy who was, I think he was tentatively called the king of the drones in the early days of social media, a guy called David Hopley, lovely bloke, up near sort of York area, and he did a photograph of a lake in Skipwith Common, and it was nicknamed Ghost Lake, and this one on the left hand side you can probably see why. So I had a few lessons with Dave, fantastic bloke. He let me fly his kind of all singing, all dancing drone with the moving legs and the things that folded up. Very trusty. But it was great fun, and I was hooked from that point. So I've been back with my drone, got it up, and I just love the way you can, really play with the shape and form of things and start to see things in the landscape. Again, a humble farm field, just the way it's plowed, and just the way a track leads it through, and thinking about color and form and shape. Again, you can have great fun with the drone. You really can. Things that you might look at on the ground, there's no photograph there, but you pop it up and look at a different perspective. And that's the same with any, with your normal camera, with a lens on, you change your perspective, you change how you look at the world, and there are pictures to be made everywhere. Now, we've seen a lot of stuff so far that's been, snap, quick fire. But again, we talked about filters earlier. You can put a filter on your drone, so you can slow the shutter speed down. And again, so it gives you the chance to play with longer shutter speeds. Obviously, you need pretty good weather conditions and a decent drone. Very rare that I get the drone to sit this still in Ardnamurchan because it is quite exposed, but I was very lucky on this occasion. And again, just enough shutter speed to kind of smooth out the sea and get that lovely sense of kind of movement and motion in the scene. Again, just a classic sunset, but again, just being able to change your perspective and make it slightly more about the elevation and where the light bounces back off the water. Sometimes you're better off low down, others get up high, and all of a sudden there's an abundance of light coming back, an abundance of color. So again, don't dismiss the ability to get the drone up to look at things like that. I do love, you know, a classic view, and what I'm going to show here now in this series as we go through towards the end is how I work in sets and how I work quite reductively. So I'll, you know, and this is thinking about projects and series. I'll get up, there'll be a wide angle. There's a good view that sets the story, that sets the scene, and then I'll be looking for elements. I'll be looking for form and shape and line and tone. And I get in there, I get into the scene, I'll be looking down, and there'll be multiple ones of these, and there'll be multiple ways that you can use the landscape as art. And these won't just sit with only drone shots. You know, certainly with my projects, these will sit with camera images, there'll be mobile phone images, there'll be painting, I'll do writing as well. It all comes together to tell the story. But like I say, you start wide and you work your way in, and you're able to look for those interesting elements, interesting play of light and form and shape and movement and process within the landscape. It's, you know, we start again, wide view. We're very fortunate to get snowed in and put up in Ardnamurchan this Christmas. I had to take an extra 3 days off work, such a trauma. And it was the worst snow they'd had in about 25 years up there. But it was an absolute winter wonderland. So I knew the drone was coming out, had to get the drone out, and get a great view. I can then explore areas up in the hills without maybe having to go traipsing and trudging, and get a different view, make it look quite alpine. If you've got fantastic cloud structures and weather systems coming through, sometimes they look great from low down, other times you get up high and they can look absolutely phenomenal because you get a sense of how domineering and the presence of the weather fronts. We then start looking back down again. So you'll notice from that very first image, there's the salt marsh and the way the snow had not quite fully kind of settled on the salt marsh. You get those color transitions. Again, you start to play with shape and form. You change your angle. You make it less obvious. You make it less obvious what the viewer's looking at. Then you notice things in the landscape. So I notice on the right-hand side, the kind of the white piece, top right, coming down, almost looks like it's got an eye. Almost looked like an animal within the landscape. So that led me to kind of, again, think reductively, to think about my composition, and to really hone in on that. And again, you don't have to present it as is. When you're editing, is your palette to play with, and you can really get creative. And this was starting off from that initial image. Again, I'm talking about shape and form and line and positioning. You know, the drone is absolutely no different. It's about where you position your elements. It's about giving yourself the appropriate separation and view. It's about thinking about photography as you would with the normal camera. And again, you get up in the air, you start with the wider scene, and again, you start to see and notice things, and everything becomes photographable. Think about William Eggleston. He did a body of work called The Democratic Forest, and he was asked about how he photographed, and he said democratically, basically saying that everything is a photographic subject. The things that are mundane, the things that aren't so obvious, depending how you look at them, are photographic subjects. So this is just a little jetty. Looks great. Looking down on it, you can play with the jetty and the water and the kind of the beach and the stones and the textures. Again, getting back out to Ardnamurchan, a wide shot to set the scene, not an image that you see. I've not even on this one edited myself out of it with my bright green cagoule jacket on middle of the scene, because this was just me visualizing in the first instance. I then flew the drone around back to that exploring and looking for compositions, and actually I started to see the elements that I knew I wanted to photograph, and it became about shape, texture, form, line, tone, leading lines, the leaning in on the elements and the softening of the mist again. And one perspective you certainly wouldn't get, you know, from the land is being able to look back inland on the coastal regions and the coastal margins. So that's where the drone, as long as you get mindful of weather and various other things, it allows you to kind of change your perspective quite radically and get a perspective that is absolutely uncommon to the ground photography. You could potentially do this from a helicopter. You get a shot from a boat. But again, they're all unique in their own way. And they all enable you, the drone especially, is to really kind of think about where your elements sit and get a little view, a change of view on the world. I love using the drone, and again, I will use elements man-made within the landscape as well. I like to look at how, you know, man interfaces with the land. So we've got modern elements here. I love the way the church kind of sits within here. But actually, then I thought, actually, what I'd love to do is kind of look down on that a little bit more. So again, it's thinking about how images work together in series, in pairs, in triplets, in a sequence, and what one image says next to another image. And we come back to that idea of the drone not always being 120 meters, 400 feet. Sometimes it's just a few feet higher than your head to enable you to get all the elements in frame that you wanted. And again, you know, we can really explore with the drone. It opens up a world to us. It enables us to kind of open up compositional options that just wouldn't be possible from the ground, but are no more important than, you know, your shots with the normal camera. Really, they form part of the sequence. But once you get the like I say, the drone up there, you see elements that are just magical. You see things from above that you just don't see from the ground. It's just, you see the world in a whole new way. It becomes magical. And again, not everything's solely top down. It's thinking about playing with the viewer's perspective, playing with their understanding of what they're looking at. So it becomes a lot, you can really kind of start to use your drone and your angle and your composition very creatively, not just looking at elements, but looking at the kind of the angle and of perspective. And it really does offer so much opportunity. And these are all shot up in sort of Ardnamurchan, Moydart, Soonart, Morven, and Ardgour. So all within kind of what I class as my kind of photographic project stomping zone. You know, and it just offers you an opportunity to play with shape, form, texture, light, composition, but equally you can shoot classic. And I always found that Castle Cheerham up in Moydart is a struggle from the ground, because there's very few vantage points where you can separate the things you would like to. So getting the drone up in the air really does allow you to create the space around elements within the scene to really harness how the light's playing with the landscape. And then you notice things once you're up in the air that, you know, oh, well, I love how the sandbar leads us out to the island, and then we actually look out to sea. You know, again, look at this from the ground, and you just don't get that same perspective. You don't get the context. Then you think, again, creatively, how can I use it to play creatively with the light, with the kind of the ambience of the light and the warmth to create mood and feel. And it is very much as you would think about any other picture in your picture making exercise. This is the one I talked about earlier. It's about just impossible to make on the ground because you're just not quite high enough to separate the tree as I would like. And as I talked about earlier, I don't just shoot landscapes. I work for a football club, and why not use your drone creatively if you're a portrait photographer? Again, we do a lot of signing images. You know, the one on the left, just a standard shot with the camera. The one on the right and the previous one, get the drone up, look at it different, think about how you can place your subject within the context of their place. So I know we're about at time, so I'm not going to touch too much on the videography. I will show a few moments of each one tonight, because really, I say a lot of my work isn't fully finished yet in terms of the videography. It's about being able to think about what you produce. But obviously, the drones, if you get a good one, they shoot fantastic. They're really capable for videos. And again, think about it as a storytelling. And I'm not shy of showing really, really early stuff. So this is one of the kind of the first ones we actually did. And again, just play with a bit of audio. Now, I say only show a little bit of each one. I can provide some links to them as well, so you can look at them in their entirety. You'll notice from that one, I talked about jumpy video. That was on the first drone I had with no filters. So you can see it's very jumpy and jerky. So you learn as you go along, and it's thinking about creativity and photography as a journey. Skip on, you'll see the difference between those two. So filters on the drone, slightly more cinematic footage, thinking about the movements, not making jerky movements with the drone, thinking about your cuts. It becomes really a learning experience. And don't see that your start of your drone journey, you have to be perfect. You'll learn so much about video editing, about your vision, about how you piece stuff together. And as I talked about, so that one was created, I say, linking into the commercial side of things for some friends with a holiday let. And again, just shows you how you can use the drone for purposes beyond your own. Again, as I talked about, do a lot of stuff with the football club. We've used the drone for kind of creating intro sequences, for creating content, for creating stuff for social media, for stadium naming rights videos. So again, it doesn't have to just be used within the landscape. You can really, really kind of have great fun with your drone, and it does open up lots of possibilities. So, you know, you may think about different ways you can use your drone, and it may open up a whole new perspective. And as I talked about a little earlier, certainly beyond the kind of stuff where we use the drone for promotional stuff, we also use the drone at Alfreton for analysis, for the coach to understand how his players move. And again, imagine looking at this from the ground. It's very difficult to understand how the players are moving here. But you get the drone up in the air, and you understand a lot more about the shape of how a football team moves, how people close space, how transitions happen, how pressing, how the intensity is, how the spaces get closed up, how a formation works. So again, don't just think of the drone as that kind of creative use only. It could be used in a very functional way if you work with sports clubs and things like that. And just to close off, just some other, for those who maybe don't want to buy a drone just yet, other creative things you could do at a lower cost. You can get some of the Insta cameras you can get on a pole. The GoPro Max, again, you get a long pole. They change the perspective that something like that does. You can get very tall monopods almost, like a pole that you see the ones on the right. Again, allow you to get that kind of elevated viewpoint. But obviously, the disadvantage you've got, unless your camera has an app that allows you to see what your camera's seeing, unlike a drone, you're not able to see what you're looking at quite as easily. And the good old classic way, if you want elevation and you don't want to own a drone, you don't want to invest in any of this stuff, you could go for a walk up a hill and enjoy a lovely day out. So I will just summarize. They are much less expensive than they used to be, but take care to think about how appropriate it is for you, how appropriate it is for the circumstances, and make sure you tick all the boxes in terms of things like that, and really think about how you might use it. But don't let kind of ring fence you. Think creatively if you do get a drone, and think about how you might really get playful. But the biggest thing for me is always be respectful, as well as following the rules, or understand that not everybody appreciates the buzz of a drone in the quiet landscape. So if you are flying, get it up high quickly and things like that. So it's certainly something to think about. And just as a final thing, you've seen lots of pictures of Ardnamurchan in my series tonight. I do run the Ardnamurchan Creative Retreat twice a year, a week, in one of the most unique landscapes in the West Highlands of Scotland. If anybody would like to join us, please do. March and October into November each year. It's immersive. It's not rows of tripods. It's about storytelling. It's about your connection to the landscape. And what I would like to do as well, because I would like to dedicate tonight's presentation really to a very good friend, an important member of the West Ardnamurchan community, the former lighthouse keeper David Ferguson, who passed away last Friday. And you know, I learned so much about the place that I photographed from Davy, that actually so much of the storytelling that I do comes from the knowledge that I took from this man. So it would have felt remiss for me not to mention Davy. So I will say thank you, very much indeed. And I'll happily take any questions or comments.
Yeah, we got loads of questions. I got loads of questions. So all you people that were typing in questions, don't worry, I've wrote them down. And we are going to come to them now. But if you do have any other questions, you can type them in. Right, I'm going to go. There's a guy called Grey Fozzie who's asked about 60 million questions. So I'm going to come to you soon. So there was someone, while I'm finding the others, there's someone called Neil. I can't remember. He was asking us all of your pictures on the Mini 4.
Yes, most of them are. I think I did touch on the early ones that were on the Phantom 4 and the early video that was on the Phantom 4. But the Mini 4 for me is a fundamental game changer, because it allows it's the size of a lens, and it doesn't become a compromise of photography or drone. It's both.
Yeah. There's a Mini 5 out now, is that right?
There
Is it
is
right?
indeed.
So second-hand Mini 4s must be like a bargain right now, especially, and second-hand Mini 3s, they must be a
Yeah.
real bargain.
Well, you can get a Mini. My daughter, she's doing a sports photography degree, and she's bought herself a Mini 3, brand new, for
Yeah.
300 quid.
Wow. See, there you go. I mean, they are cheap. They are cheap. Right. I found some questions. Here we go. Grey Fozzie. This is a two-parter. But it's about apps. Basically, so I'm going to read it. Are there any apps which have good info about where you can and can't fly? I've seen where they indicate airports and other places where you can't fly. And now we're on to page 2. But you'd think public areas, fields, etc., would be okay, but councils often prevent flying from parks, so it becomes more challenging to find somewhere, even just to learn and practice. I think it's a very good question there. And yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, yeah, fantastic question. There's without going to all of them, just a quick Google. There's loads of apps and Notum, kind of linked websites that will tell you about where you can and can't fly. They don't go down to the granular level of those kind of local governance rules that some councils will put on. So it's just about thinking a little bit creatively, and maybe just thinking about where you can get. I mean, you can understand why they say parks, because children around and things like that. So again, yeah, if you can just think of somewhere that's maybe a bit of scrubland, a bit of wasteland, it might visually not be the most appealing, but as a learning zone and as somewhere to go and get the drone up and practice and fly. And I know the one thing that Dave Hopley taught me right from the start, and I would absolutely say to everybody, is learn to fly your drone manually. The return to home and all the auto stuff is fantastic. It gives you the guardrails, but if you know how to fly and land it and take off and everything manually, you'll feel so much more confident. If you need to respond and react quickly, you can do it. Take control.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is the New Forest where I go there every year actually. You can't fly a drone anywhere in the New Forest. It's massive. But they've just banned them.
Yeah.
And that actually annoys me, because they've just banned them because they've not got a clue, or they're just scared of the odd idiot. I fly mine anyway. I know you want to be respectful on that, but I use my own sort of common sense on that one. But yeah, I think that Grey Fozzie there has got a good point, because you think sometimes, you like in the New Forest where you think, okay, there's no one, it's absolutely open, there's no one there. And then but in some places you can't. But there's another really good question, this one here from Mickey Sullivan. Here's a question I've heard one photography say it's best to do auto bracketing, but another said that it's not to. What's your opinion on advice? I have a trip on the Isle of Skye soon, and my drone will be coming with me.
Oh, well, that's great news. It's going. Fantastic place to go. Lots of open space. And I think as you would with a camera, you might auto bracket depending on the light and the conditions. So I would always consider what the light's like and the time of year and the conditions and your angle and your perspective. The dynamic range on them, I find, is fantastic. So as long as you've got, I mean, I always fly with a filter on anyway, and then probably an ND 4 or 8, just to give me a little bit of kind of cinematic. But I just find it helps with the kind of dynamic range out a little bit more. So for me, a 40 quid set of filters, Freewell or any other reputable company, will allow you to experiment. But I would say the same as anything, don't be swayed by what somebody tells you. Consider the light, consider the conditions, consider the dynamic range, and make your decision about what's best for you at the time.
Yeah, give it a go yourself. I mean, when I've used my drone, I put it on bracketing. It's not auto bracketing though. For me, I just put it on bracketing. Then I've got 3 exposures to choose from, or I can blend them if I want to. I think auto bracketing is when is when it does it itself, doesn't it? In cameras, it takes
Yes.
the 3 pictures and merges it itself. I suppose it depends on what drone you've got to what it actually does, doesn't it? But no,
Yes.
great question, Mick. Mick, great question. Another one from Grey Fozzie here, which I thought was a good question. Does time-lapse photography require a drone-specific app or just a generic app on your phone as a remote controller?
Well, I've seen. I mean, I don't do any time lapse stuff myself, but I've seen some great stuff from people who've done it, and often, as long as you can set interval shooting, which a lot of drones will allow you to do anyway,
Yeah.
then actually the magic happens that when you piece it together in software. So again, it will depend on if you've got you're using your phone as the controller, which obviously sometimes allows you to sideload more options versus if you're just using the one with the inbuilt screen. But I would say as long as it'll do interval shooting, or you want to do that yourself, there's always ways and means.
Yeah. I believe that the latest DJI apps, and they've got it on there. There's a feature on there that can do them.
Yeah.
Like an auto feature. What do they call it? Where it actually flies forwards and takes
Yes.
pictures.
I
Time
think so,
warp. I
because
can't remember what it's called.
it's certainly on the Osmo Pocket, isn't it?
Yeah,
That you can do them. So and being DJI, that they'll have started to work that technology into all there.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, a GoPro can do it, so I'm pretty sure a drone can do it as well.
Yeah.
Right, there is another one, good one here from Ruby. Do you crop images much? Thought that was a nice, simple but valid question.
That's a great question. Yes, I will invariably try and do as much as I can. Obviously, within camera, within drone, get either myself with the normal camera, or get the drone to position I want. But actually, if it's about the elevation and the perspective, sometimes you do need to crop. And I was just noticed I did a few for the presentation where I've maybe just cropped a little bit off. And a lot of my cropping, I'm not really just to cropping for certain sizes. Same as when I print, I will always crop if I do need to, specific to the elements that I want in and out the frame that I've made, because I maybe sometimes shoot to give myself a little leeway. So often the crop is around just refining the composition.
Yeah, good. Okay, Stu Hampton here. Quite an interesting question. Rob, given your talk features a number of images from Scotland, do you prefer this region over your surrounding remote spots in Sheffield, such as the Peaks and Pennines?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, I guess we went to Ardnamurchan 10 odd years ago. It was being a geographer, it took me there to look at the Great Eukarite and the volcanic crater. We fell in love with the place. And as is often the case, you take for granted often what is on your own doorstep. Although I do shoot a lot of local projects, not necessarily going as far as the peaks. I'll do a lot of stuff within the kind of the semi-urban area we live as well. So, I'm an Ardnamurchanophile. So I do. Yeah, if I could only photograph one place for the rest of my life, then it's a simple answer. But that's not to say it's better than Sheffield or better than the Peaks. I have had, I've got some really cool ideas about I shoot the Park Hill Flats quite a lot. I love the kind of the brutalist graphic nature of them. I've done everything from from kind of urban landscapes to kind of intimate stuff to portraits and things there. But I do love the way they're laid out, and I would love to get the drone up above them. So yeah, potentially.
Yeah, good stuff. Right, here we go. That's we've got one from Batik Man 22. Brilliant info, Rob. Thanks. What are the minimum camera lens requirements I would need to take good quality documentary style images? I don't think that's to do with drones, but the next bit is any go-to drones would you recommend? I think the whole thing is like, let's talk about a decent go-to drone.
Yeah, I mean, you can absolutely do relative, documentary style, and so anything you can do with a normal camera, you can do with a drone. I would always say, they're generally wide anyway. Most drones have got a fairly wide field of view. There's a couple of the more expensive ones which have got kind of the new Hasselblad multi-lens and various things. And I know some of the original Inspires and various things, you could actually get an interchangeable lens for them. But I would say don't be put off by, using, even for documentary, any of the kind of the much more portable, the mini drones will do fantastic job, and the frames are of really high quality that you can crop in to get your compositions without losing too much quality. So in terms of go-to, it depends on your budget, but if you don't want it to take over your world and be the choice of or, I would say the mini series is a great one to start with, and you might want to push up to the slightly more expensive smaller ones later on. But yeah, the minis are a great way in.
Yeah, for sure. You're saying like when you can get drones up in it, like even the 250-gram ones, you still can't fly them over a city, can you? Or like a road, can you? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely. So you've still got the same restrictions because even a little Mini 4, if that crashes on a road or a motorway or something, is going to cause chaos, isn't it? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I was in it's just a little story because it's below 250 grams and above 250 grams, and I was at Norwich Castle, and there was this guy, and he's got his drone, and it was the Mini 4, right? And he's flying it. He's just circling it around the castle. It's in the middle of Norwich and that. And I was saying to him, like, he said, yeah, because it's under 250 grams. And I was thinking, no, I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter about under two. It's because you basically can't fly over people, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's as simple as that, isn't it? Anyway, sorry, that was me just jumping in there. Right, what one was that? That was better. Oh, we've got this is Grey Fozzie again. Is AI able to remove the drone's noise to pick up ambient sounds? But I think no drone records sound, does it, at this moment? Or maybe there is a few.
Yeah, and I wouldn't expect that a drone is. I would say if you want to create something, it's a bit cinematic, and I have got some videos where there's kind of, the sea and various things. I would always record the audio separate. And when your mobile phone, you get a plug-in mic for the mobile phone, position it, and I'd always separate your audio and your drone, and think of the drone as the camera, and dedicate your audio to another device, because you can. And obviously, you then got to think about if you fly too low, it's going to pick the sound up, etc. And that's where, when you're doing your post-processing and you're editing, you're thinking about audio design. So that might be where you drop the sound and bring in some atmospheric music. You might want to, there's plenty of things like epidemic sounds and things like that where you can get a bit of stock sound, a bit of audio, so you can easily kind of work over it. I dare say that actually there's AI in sound editors that will edit stuff out, but I tend to find, and a lot of the audio editors where it edits things out, it does make it sound a little bit fishbowl-esque and a bit weird. So yeah, I always try and think of if I'm doing it as storytelling and it's something that where I want the sound to be important, and this is the really important thing to remember, that actually often when we watch something online, or we watch a film, or we watch a movie or whatever, the sound quality is often much more important to us psychologically,
yes,
than the visuals. Yeah. We can cope with visuals that maybe not always the best, but if the sound's off, it drives you balmy.
I've just been teaching that, actually. We've got a new videography course for anyone watching. You want to learn videography? We've just released a whole course, but yeah, I'll talk about that. It's over 50% of the video. If you get sound wrong, the whole video is wrong. No matter if you've got really good visuals, you've ruined it. But no, absolutely right. We're going to, there's one other question here. But we're going to end on this question. It's a very good one. From John O'Grady here. Any tips for editing drone pics, as I find the quality from the Mini 3 to be not much better than the phone camera lens, other than getting more expensive drone with better cameras? That's a good question, because basically just like a drone set, especially the Mini 5, I believe, has got a 1/4-inch sensor, which is like the old Air 2S, which is quite a good sensor really for something compact. But the Mini 3, I think, has got a smaller one, and you're right, because it's like a phone, it's very small sensor and therefore not good quality. But have you got any tips on that?
Yeah, I mean, and I would say I'd apply the same logic to editing stuff off your phone, to if you use a lower resolution camera and various things like it. So it's thinking about your editing judiciously. Don't go over the top. Know the limitations, and this applies to everything in photography, doesn't it? Know the limitations of the kit you're using and how far you can push it. And you'll learn that. And actually, a lot of the time, the smaller the sensor and the older the tech, the worse it gets in low light as well. So you'll find you struggle in low light. So often it's about thinking about how, maximize your opportunity and potential. So go out, know the limitations, and go out at the right time, edit just the right amount based on the kit. But don't be too worried about it. Just really try and work within the limitations of what you've got, unless you want to spend a bit more and move on. But yeah,
that's right. With a camera like that, when you need to get the exposure, get that correct, and then you don't have to pull and push it around that much. I suppose that's the kind of answer. Hopefully, John, that is the answer for you. But or you've got to go and spend a lot of money on a new drone. But that will make you happy, John. It will make you happy.
it will. It might not make the other half quite as happy.
No, that's right. But you just pretend that nothing happened, didn't you? So, where did that come from?
It just arrived. I've had that ages.
Yes.
There's a really good question I've just seen on the
like, that old thing. That old thing. I've had it ages. Yeah.
I just noticed one of the questions lower down. I know we're trying to finish on that one about the season of the year and drone landscaping, and which is best.
Yeah. All right.
I think it's a really great question. And actually, I wouldn't say don't be guided by a drone can only photograph the landscape in this season or that season. Really, it's about what season do you like to work in, what colors, what textures, what conditions, what appeal to you. Because actually, the same with going out with your normal camera. Actually, what you want to do is you want to enjoy it. You want to get into the zone. You want to get into your element. So actually, work with what you love. Lean into that, and the drone will just feel a natural part of the arsenal at that point.
Very good answer. I like it. Right. That is it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please put there's loads of people that have already put in here. Thank you. And they've loved the presentation, etc. So show your love there. Obviously, go and check Rob out. Let's go. I'll just put that over once more so that you can go and check out his website. There you go. That's Rob's stuff there. And it's goodbye from me. A goodbye from you, Rob. You say goodbye, and then I'm going to end the stream.
Goodbye. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mark.
That's all right. You stay there, Rob. And everyone else, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. See you later.